And in today's F1 news, post the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka, only now it's becoming clear the extent of Max Verstappen's dominance. Because over the past 48 Grand Prix, he's only lost 10. 3 of those have been to his teammate Checo Perez. In terms of most laps led, he's now on 3,009, passing up Ayrton Senna for 4th place on the all-time list. So much of a certainty is the Dutchman for the 2024 Drivers' Championships that bookmakers, they won't even take your money. And if for the up-and-coming Chinese Grand Prix you wanted to bet that Max will take top step of the podium, to win £2, you'll have to bet 9. Oh. The bookmakers are saying then run the Chinese Grand Prix under the current set of circumstances 100 times and Max, he'll win 80 of them. Oh, the humanity. And since as a percentage of the whole, 53% of the current F1 watching populace are Drive to Survive fans, this begs the question, who's going to watch? Well, not Mercedes fans and definitely not Lewis Hamilton fans, because to the former, Mercedes PR tweeted out, if you don't love me at my worst, then you don't deserve to love me at my best. And Mercedes fans were none too pleased at that, and quite rightfully so, on a few different fronts. Exhibit A, and let's be honest and frank here, no one is here for Mercedes. They're all Lewis Hamilton fans. This is a marriage of convenience. Don't believe me? Let's fast forward to Silverstone next year and see how many Mercedes caps are being worn as versus red Scuderia Ferrari ones. Exhibit B, if you're a world-renowned sports franchise, surely then the one set of people that you don't take aim at on social media is your fans. Toxicity and or fan eccentricity be damned, just not the done thing. Take aim at the merchandise buying fans, you know, the ones that spend 50 quid on a luminous yellow cap. How dare you? Exhibit C, these guys have been struggling for a while now in terms of their underperformance, design philosophy et al. And for most Mercedes fans, that can be forgiven. But that there is no silverware light at the end of this very dark and dim tunnel is frustrating to some. I mean, check this out. Racing News reports that Wolf spots a clue behind awful Mercedes run. Toto thinks that Mercedes may have spotted a limitation with the W15 on a weekend in Japan, which saw his team fail to make good on an offset strategy race, something that Austrian bemoaned as awful. Yeah, well, no kidding, Sherlock, because initially you went for the 1 stop, but then when Lewis was struggling on his tyres, you switched to a 2. Yet again, indecision central. And an oft-trotted out thesis from Mercedes F1 boffins was that temperature changes had something to do with their fall away in performance. But owing to only a small change in temps during the course of the race, Toto, he doesn't think so. Lest we forget that Lewis's performance came back to him towards the end of the Grand Prix on medium tyres, lighter fuel load. And speaking of the 7-time champ, reports are that never more than now has he been looking forward to starting afresh next year with Scuderia Ferrari. Planet F1 reports that Lewis has admitted he's unsure if Mercedes will allow him to start work with Ferrari before the F1 2025 season, insisting all his energy is focused on helping his current team get back to the top. Hamilton was caught snapping at a reporter for asking about his impending switch to Ferrari after a challenging Japanese Grand Prix where he slumped to a distant 9th on race day to continue his worst ever start to an F1 season. Of course I'm looking forward to the future, but we're currently in a difficult situation and that's my challenge. How can I work with the boys? Can I give better debriefs? Can I give better direction? And this then is the conundrum facing Mercedes, because whilst their star man is in a sort of purgatory, the millions of fans who are only invested in the sport because of him, Mercedes cannot and should not expect to be able to leverage any sort of goodwill with them. Banter then on social media, it's not that time. And 3-time F1 Grand Prix winner Juan Thierry Boutson only reiterates this. He believes that Lewis's move to Ferrari next year will revitalise the Brit. And to this end, the Telegraph writes that 2024 is an all-time low for Lewis Hamilton. That the Britain's professionalism will never be in doubt, but career worst start to a season and looming Ferrari move makes for a confusing time. After Friday practice in Suzuka, Lewis said that this was the best his current Mercedes has felt, and even after qualifying 7th, half a second off Max Verstappen's pole time, he was positive. The D15 was the most comfortable it had been all season, yet the signs of positivity were scant after the race. In general, the car feels pretty bad, he said, after struggling to 9th at Suzuka. And when it comes to Mercedes woes, here's the clincher. The Telegraph writes the stark contrast between Friday and Sunday is a familiar one for Mercedes, especially for Lewis Hamilton. Their time in the new ground effect era has been characterised by both a lack of progress and false dawns. In recent months though, Mercedes have fronted up to their problems even if they are some way away from fixing them. Whether or not Hamilton is personally confused or just frustrated, it's certainly confusing to anyone watching. It was strange to hear him sheepishly almost request that he let his teammate buy at Suzuka. It's not something that you hear often from even those drivers in F1 who are lucky to have their seat, let alone drivers of Hamilton's class. All that to say this then, that now might not be the time to banter your fans, Mercedes, because you're going to need them. And in other F1 news, post the Japanese Grand Prix, Fernando Alonso has called that one of his top 5 drives ever. The Spaniard said, I think P5 yesterday in qualifying and P6 today in the race, that we're totally out of position. So yeah, I'm very proud. Asked to elaborate on his claim, he said, well, I think we are the 5th fastest team by a good margin to the 4th and good margin to 6th. We are quite established there. And ahead of next weekend's Chinese Grand Prix, drivers have warned that there are better race weekends at which to have a sprint. Max Verstappen during the post-race presser asserting that there will be less time to do due diligence to prep the cars. Though on the flip side, continued Max, this might switch things up, make things more interesting even. The irony is not lost on me, Max Verstappen, because the variety of which you speak, F1 needs now more than ever. And in Fernando Alonso's world, speculation about him joining Mercedes seems to have subsided. This on the back of comments from the Spaniard alluding to the fact that Mercedes represent a back step for him. The man from Oviedo, Asturias, emboldened now in his green machine since they solved their correlation issues and tyre deck is no more. It's reported that Alonso leaving Aston Martin isn't something they're taking seriously. Pedro de la Rosa asserting that the cars are the most important weapon for convincing Fernando that the car improves and we become more and more competitive. For Fernie then at this stage, maybe it's Red Bull or bust. And on that Red Bull seat, Helmut Marko has chimed in. He had this to say. For Tele Red Bull, no, that's not an option. And on the prospect of Alex Albon, Marko had this to say. Before that can even happen, he'll need to be in one of our cars. However, he has a contract with Williams until 2025. Helmut, try telling that to the Thai owners, the ones that own 51% of Red Bull. Good luck with that, mate. And on the weekend that Yuki Tsunoda became the first Japanese driver to win points at his home Grand Prix since one Kamui Kobayashi, Marko has been uncharacteristically generous of his praise of Yuki. Yuki got away sensationally well at the second start. His overtaking manoeuvres were the show of the day. The fans were completely over the moon. His weekend was on par with Max, Alonso and co. He was faultless. A super performance under the pressure of his home race. High praise indeed. But here's where it might get a bit techie, because the Suzuka circuit around which they raced this weekend past is owned by Honda. Honda will be partnering up with Aston Martin in 2026. And much like the owners of Red Bull who were desperate to team up with Albon, Honda, being a Japanese company, would love to see nothing more than a Japanese driver in a car powered by a Japanese company. Word on the F1 curb is that they'll do anything to make this happen. No further questions, Your Honour.